This is the Three Skeevers podcast.
All right, episode 28 of the Three Skeevers podcast with Grim from Grimsforge Gaming and myself, Icy with Icyfire Gaming. How you doing, Grim?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. This week it's been a very nice, relaxing week for me because since me and you have met a year and a half ago, I've essentially stopped questing and doing solo PvE content, but been trying to get back into it this past week, and it's very relaxing. It's very nice. I'm actually remembering the good old times of just following the story and everything. So it's been a very nice, enjoyable week.
I'll never be able to get you back to PvP now.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
So today we have a special guest today, Dottz Gaming. How are you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. And let's just jump right into the questions. So Grim, what do we got on the docket today?
We have an awesome episode lined up today. We're going to just jump right in because I think we have so much content here. So Dottz, I was looking at your channel. How many years ago was it that you started? Like 5, 6 years ago?
I started all the way back in 2014. It's been a long journey.
Yeah. What was the thought process on starting to do your content?
Way back in the day, like in 2014 when I started, I was playing a lot of WoW at the time, and I remember I was always watching a lot of content creators mostly on YouTube. I would watch Twitch occasionally, but I was mostly on YouTube, and I just remember watching people making videos and thinking that was just something that I could do myself, and it's something that I'd wanted to do myself. And I had done YouTube like a little bit when I was like younger. If any of you guys have used GIMP before, it's like a free version of Photoshop. I did like GIMP tutorials and stuff. So I'd always been interested in YouTube in some capacity. And then I just finally decided, I loved gaming my whole life. So I decided to start making a YouTube channel on gaming. And eventually the journey kind of led me to where I am today. It's been a long one, but it's been fun.
Yeah. With your channel, were you always in the like PvP realm, or did you, as you learned more, you gravitated into the PvP realm? Like, how's that journey look like for you?
I've pretty much always liked PvP things. Yeah, I mean, I was an athlete my whole life, so I've always been very competitive and into competition and stuff, but mostly from the perspective of like always trying to be better than I was, mostly competitive with myself and just trying to, be better at whatever sport I was playing or be better at whatever game I was playing. And so, yeah, I mean, it's always been PvP. It's like the channel started as a WoW PvP channel. And then eventually I switched over to ESO. And eventually that even started to go more into PvP too. And I even knew when I first started ESO that was the goal, was to do a lot of PvP stuff eventually.
Yeah. I think with most content creators, when you go and you look at their videos, like when they first started, the thumbnails, and you see just the maturation or the,
absolutely
progression of thumbnails and creativity and things like that. You can definitely see that. You just have to know that small changes like that, the thumbnails getting better, crisper, cleaner. There's a maturation process happening, and they're learning, the ins and outs of it. I love it.
Absolutely.
Do you follow any other content creators? Like, who's your favorite? Were you watching? You said you were watching other content creators. Who are those content creators? And you were like, I can do that. I want to do that.
Yeah. So back in the day, the two ones that I watched the most for World of Warcraft were Bajira and Sea-Doo. They were probably the two that I watched the most. And then in regards to ESO, it was probably Gilliam and Kevduit were probably the two I watched the most, and which is really funny because now like Kev's one of my best friends I met through content creation. So it's really funny that somebody that I watched way back when and really liked his content is actually, I'm like friends with the guy now. So it's really cool.
Yeah,
Nice,
such an awesome dude. Yeah, we got a chance to dance with Kevduit, so that was a highlight for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with the content creation and stuff like that, there's a lot of aspects to it, from thumbnail creation to SEO and editing the videos and stuff. Do you handle every aspect of your channel and your content?
I do everything. I do everything for my YouTube channel. I do everything for my Twitch channel. I do everything for my website. I do everything for the finances. I basically do everything. I have some people that do help me with builds on the website. Like I'd probably say I write about 50% of the builds for the website. And then I have people that I've met through playing or that are in my community who I've played with or I know who help with some of the build content for the site. And then usually what I have them do is I'll have them send me their write-ups after like a patch has happened and they've gotten to test things out. They'll send me their write-ups like with like a Word document or something, and then I'll basically transpose those onto my website. But yeah, I pretty much handle every aspect of it. So it's a lot of work though, but it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, they look at a full-time content creator, which you are right now. Is that
I
right?
am, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So they look at a full-time content creator and they think this dude sits around and just plays video games all day. And it's like, you know,
it's so funny because when one of my friends is a teacher and he teaches like middle school, high school kids, and he'll always tell his students that one of his best friends is a content creator, and they're always like, "Oh my god, it's got to be like I said, so nice to sit around and play games all day." And what he tells them and what I tell everybody is it's ironically enough for me, playing the games is like the smallest piece of what I actually do in a day. I'd say maybe for other creators who are a lot larger, who have like basically staff, they're able to focus way more on playing the games because they have somebody to manage all their social media. They have someone to make their YouTube videos. They have someone to do all of that back end work. And, when you're kind of like the smaller to mid size, you got to kind of do all of that yourself, and so it definitely cuts into time. And so actually gaming is one of the smallest pieces of what I actually have the chance to do.
Yeah.
Would you consider starting a team that would help you kind of expand a little bit more, or is that part of creating your content, like kind of just doing it yourself and being like a one man
I would
one
say
man
down
band?
the line, absolutely. Like if the channel kind of started to grow to the point where I was like, okay, if I take some of the money from the channel that it's making and invest it into an editor or invest it into like a social media manager, if I could like see growth from that investment, then I would absolutely do it. But right now, I can handle it all myself. And it's nice to have all the money, kind of stay with me and help pay bills and stuff. But definitely down the road, if it ever grew to a point where I was like, okay, if I think bringing on people could help grow this further, that's absolutely what I would do. Because it's kind of similar to even what I did with the channel in the first place. Because it's so funny. I've seen so many people when they content create, they just dive in head first, like not a lot of followers, not a lot of subs, and they'll just be like, all right, I'm full time. And it's just like, well, how? You still got to pay bills and things still have to get done. And so the way that I actually did it was I worked full time. I worked my full time job 5 days a week, 9 to 5. I'd come home, I would work out, eat dinner, and then from like probably 6:30, 7 o'clock till 1 in the morning, I would just do Dottz gaming. And I did that after I graduated for about 2 years until, like I said, I had, knew that if I put more time into the channel and put more time into working on this, that it would be able to grow more. And so I knocked my job down to part-time, moved Dottz Gaming from basically like a hobby at the time to like a part-time thing. And then ironically enough, what made me full-time was COVID, where the company that I worked for said, hey, we don't have a lot of work for you right now since you're part-time. So we'll call you when we need you. But otherwise, you're that's it. And so I basically was kind of thrusted into full-time content creation when COVID happened. And thankfully, everything ended up working out and things took off. And, I'm able to do this full time. It's nice.
I see that same thing happen in the combat sports world. I see a lot of people that probably didn't even have an amateur career, and just one day, they're like, "I'm a tough dude. I'm good at fighting. I'm going to be a full-time professional fighter." They quit their job and just start training full-time. They have no income coming in, and
Yeah.
they think that it's going to work that way, and it's a very eye-opening and humbling experience for them. But so just before you jumped into the channel here, you were on Black Desert Online.
I was,
And
yeah.
yeah, you spend a lot of time on WoW and you spend a lot of time on ESO. How do you balance these games that you're playing? Like, these are three major MMOs.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think when it comes to balancing MMOs, so actually I get that question a lot on my stream too. They're like, how do you find the time to play all the games? I think it's a matter of choosing the MMOs that can kind of complement each other well. And if anybody's played all three of those games, they'll know that of those three games, BDO easily requires the most time put in. But kind of like where my ESO account is, I really don't have to do a lot on it from patch to patch, with the exception of update my character build. So because that's one of the beauty parts about ESO. One of the things I like about it the most is that you can just like put your account down, and whenever you come back, it's still there. It's still just as powerful. Everything is totally still there. You can keep everything. Everything's account wide. And so that's kind of the nice thing about ESO, where I can kind of hop in and out of it as, I'm enjoying the game or wanting to take a break from it, and it's always there. WoW's the one that obviously will take a little bit more work because I got to maintain a character weekly. But even with the latest WoW expansion, um, I feel like with the character maintenance, it's a lot easier than it's been in the past, because with World of Warcraft specifically, in the past, there was stuff you had to do every single day. And if you didn't do it, your character would fall behind and other people would pull ahead and you'd be less powerful by comparison. But with their latest expansion, a lot of that stuff is more on a weekly rotation instead of a daily rotation. So it's like, as long as I do my weeklies, I can do whatever I want the rest of the week. And even then, eventually those weeklies, you stop needing to do them eventually for character progression. So even now, my WoW account can just kind of sit there and do what it's doing until 9.1, and I'm basically perfectly fine. So it allows me to put more time into BDO. So I kind of ebb and flow between the different games that I play based off of what I want to put time in the most at at any given moment, what game I'm enjoying the most. And it's just, I think if I had to play like 2 or 3 games that required constant grinding, it wouldn't work, obviously. But I think it's about picking games that the time requirements are a little bit different, so you can put in time here, time there, more time here, what I'm trying to say, into those different games.
Yeah, you have to practice an immense amount of discipline, I think, to balance all three of those. And
It's definitely hard sometimes, yeah.
yeah, I saw your schedule and I was like, dang, like, yeah, he's working.
Yeah, a lot of times, even over the weekend, like when I'm like watching TV or something on the couch, I'll have like my WoW account on my laptop while I'm like watching TV, and I'll just do like my weeklies really quick on my laptop because I didn't have time to do them during the week. So yeah, it definitely could be a lot of work, but I think it's just about picking the games that you like and playing them when you have the time, and if you're actually enjoying them.
So with ESO, we've got Blackwood coming around the corner here. We've got the PTS up and
Yeah.
going, companions, some changes to proc sets and stuff like that. What's your hot take, I guess, or quick first impression of that new patch?
So, I would say overall, the patch itself, that's removing the balance. The patch itself looks really cool. I think the companions look really interesting. That was actually one of the features I liked the most about the original Guild Wars 1 game, was having the companions that could go on adventures with me and that I can, put different, weapons on them and have them use different skills. And I really like that. So to see something similar come to ESO, I think is really, really cool. My first experience with the Elder Scrolls as an IP was with Oblivion back in the day. So obviously I'm going to be a huge sucker for an Oblivion based expansion. And was hoping that there would be something related to Oblivion. I wish that they added a little bit more. Selfishly, obviously, I wish they added a little bit more with Cyrodiil, a little Cyrodiil thing in there, but unfortunately we didn't get that. But overall, I think the expansion itself looks pretty good. In terms of the proc sets, though, definitely not excited for that next patch. It's kind of, I feel like it kind of stinks that way back when, if you obviously, I think you guys were playing with Morrowind and times before that, where there was the Viper Selene meta, and what a plague that was, and they worked so hard to get away from it. I feel like we're starting to like rotate back into the past, and now we're going back to where procs rule the day, and stats and your actual abilities are a lot less impactful, which I'm not personally a big fan of. I don't, I've talked about this on my stream before. I don't genuinely get upset or annoyed if I lose to another person in a duel if like they just beat me. Like I lost a duel on stream the other day to a Magicka Templar who I made a mistake, he capitalized on it, and he killed me, but it was in Cyrodiil. So it was like, okay, I lost to this guy. But in a battleground, it's not nearly as satisfying because I'm taking unhealable amounts of proc set damage from the guy's armor, and he's not even clicking any skills outside of maybe a light attack. And I'm just taking unhealable amounts of damage from just the guy's gear. So it doesn't feel as satisfying from like a competitive PvP standpoint to feel like you're dying to someone's gear and not necessarily the other player, you know?
Yeah. With your crazy schedule, I wouldn't blame you if you haven't caught this, but one of the things that Icy and I kind of put together and propose is that they control proc set damage. There's a throttle through the Battle Spirit passive for, Cyrodiil Battlegrounds and Imperial
Right.
City. And what'll happen is you've got all these proc sets, and what they need to do is go through and separate the ones that are just they're not free damage and free healing. They're like Eternal Vigor's currently listed as a proc set, or New Moon is currently listed as a proc set, So they separate the ones that don't do free damage and free healing, okay, and those are fine. And then the ones that are Crimson, Celine, all these different ones that put a stamp on it, and that stamp connects it to the Battle Spirit passive, and when you look at your Battle Spirit, it'll say any armor sets that have the BS stamp on it are cut by 20% or 25%. Done. Because if you think about when I go and I look at people's comments, there is a large group of PvEers in this game, and there's a large group of PvEers that are mad at the PvPers because they're like, a couple crybabies whine about proc sets, and then my proc sets are getting nerfed or getting changed all the time, and I'm sick of it. If they were to do that and control the proc sets in a PvP environment through Battle Spirit, they could release them as strong as they want. And let the PvEers run around and have a heyday, be proc central, I'm fine with that. And then the second that they come to the PvP realm, they understand that in the way of balancing, these sets aren't going to have nuclear capabilities anymore.
And personally, whenever I refer to and I always make this disclaimer on my stream because I don't want it to ever get misconstrued. Whenever I refer to proc sets, I personally mean exactly what you were talking about. Grothdar, Zons, Crimson, Varus Scales, anything that deals free damage or free healing is what I consider personally like a proc set. Burning Spellweave, Clever, stuff like that I don't have a problem with. It's obviously the ones that just provide a ludicrous amount of free damage and free healing. And yeah, I mean, that I think would be a great solution because Battle Spirit would then be able to like isolate those where you can maintain their balance in PvE so that if people do want to use those things, they can, but they will be more controlled inside of a PvP environment. But another thing that I found awfully peculiar and that I brought up was that a lot of the damage dealing proc sets only scale off of weapon and spell damage. And so, for example, on my Magicka Nightblade build, I go for a full maximum Magicka stack, but then I also use Zons. I can't do that anymore because my guy uses maximum Magicka as the primary driver for his damage, and the sets only scale off of weapon and spell damage. And I'm just a little, I guess I don't understand their rationale behind making healing one scale with max stat and damage one scale with weapon damage, and then these one scale with health. Where I don't understand why they don't make like the damage and healing ones just scale like regular abilities where they can adjust the coefficients and the multipliers for whether or not how much max stat influences it or how much weapon and spell damage influences it, just like they do with regular skills. I don't know why. I feel like they're like overcomplicating it a little bit. Maybe there's something I'm personally missing about it, but I don't know why they don't just have them scale like everything else in the game. And then another problem you also run into is that they slapped on the same number for weapon and spell damage, but anybody who has made a build in this game knows that it's infinitely easier to stack weapon damage than it is to stack spell damage. And so then you have the different numbers for things. And I don't know. It's just, I feel that the concept of the scaling wasn't bad, but the execution is a little puzzling.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wish they would just scrap that whole this scales off this, but I know that they probably won't because the immense amount of work and effort that went into it. But they could have kept the proc sets exactly what they were before, and just through attaching them to the Battle Spirit passive.
Absolutely.
20% across the board. And imagine if, the PvP community says, hey, we feel like proc sets are still a little bit overperforming. Okay, we're going to go from 25 to 30%. How's it feel now? Feels great. We love it. Thanks. So,
absolutely.
I really, really wish that hopefully somebody catches this, that can make things happen, catches this episode and can make things happen, or we at least plant a seed, right, of thought. And that's all we can do is plant the seed of thought. And like, you know what, that would be so much easier than what we're doing with all these multipliers and coefficients and everything else.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
what
Yeah,
the
I feel like things have just, because I've even talked about this where it's kind of funny if you look at the journey that proc sets have had, where I feel like around the time of the Elsewhere patch, maybe a little bit prior, I feel like proc sets had a really healthy spot in the way that they were utilized in a PvP build. Like, for example, one of my Mag DK builds from back in the day was super basic Valken Scoria, Shackle Breaker, and Burning Spellweave. And
Love
Valken
it.
Scoria was just, it's how I've described it on stream. It was the little cherry on top of the build. Helped me get a little bit of burst out there, helped me close out some kills that maybe the DK struggled to close out. But it wasn't like anybody was throwing up their hands. It was like, man, unhealable Valken Scoria damage. It was a little bit of an extra oomph to the build, But as CP had the amount of crit that you can gain from CP was nerfed, so crit became less valuable. And then they also nerfed healing, so then people started to struggle to heal as much. Then they added Malakath into the game, and because people were struggling to heal, they started to use heavy armor more. And because crit became less valuable, Malakath then became more valuable. Then they also buffed proc sets, just raw numbers. And so you had all these things happen right in a row that just brought us here. And I remember as all this stuff was happening, myself and a couple of my friends were like, we will end up back in a proc set meta if this keeps trending this way. And we did. And so it just kind of stinks to see. I feel like proc sets had a pretty healthy balance where they were solid in CP PvP, but they were a little bit stronger in no CP just because you had less red CP mitigation. But over time, as the game has progressed, I feel like the proc set damage has just kind of gone out of control, and we're now we're here, where you're rocking 3 proc sets, Malakath, Spended Brutality, and calling it a day.
Yeah, I was just on Nolan Kirchhoff's stream last night. He just does solo PvP in Cyrodiil and Imperial City, and occasionally queues for Battlegrounds, and he plays a lot of different stamina classes. And he ran into a Stamsork, I think, last night that was wearing Zons. And he was like, and it hit him for like 8K, it hit Nolan. And Nolan's like, a freaking Stamsork rocking Zons. What is the world coming to? And I was like, dude, welcome to the PC meta. Like, you're lucky on his back bar he didn't have a Vatishran staff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know personally, like, it always is like a punch in the face when I'm like, I'll be playing in Cyrodiil for, let's say, like 3 hours. I'll be like, you know what? I kind of want to do a BG. That first Battleground, I always play like hot trash because it's so jarring going from the way that damage is paced in the no proc Cyrodiil to then going into Battlegrounds, and if somebody looks at you funny, you lose 3/4 of your health. It's so different, and it's so jarring, the different PvP balances at the moment.
Yeah,
I kind of wish they did like a Vidoc on how they make the decisions that they do. Like, oh yeah, we're working on doing this for BGs, or we're doing the no proc thing, and this is kind of like our thought process and stuff like that. It would be so interesting to see how they come up with the ideas and the systems that they do.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always been curious about too, because in terms of like exactly what you're talking about, the decision making, the big parallel that I always draw to that is the dichotomy between Scalebreaker and Dragonhold. If you guys obviously remember those 2 patches, how after Elsewhere, they just buffed Dottz so much, and Dottz were insane, and Dottz were crazy, and they were broken and overpowered, and everyone was just building dot damage. And then
your channel grew. Your channel grew by 100%.
Everyone's doing ESO Dottz, and it's like, oh, there I am. But then in Dragonhold, they nerfed Dottz so hard that they were weaker than they were in Elsewhere. And so I even still look back at that period of time, and I cannot for the life of me figure out what the goal was there, because I'm always thinking, because they're going through this whole audit and they're trying to figure out in my opinion, the way that I see this is they're trying to figure out what they want their game to be balance wise. They're trying to audit the game and add all these new what do they call them? Blanking out on the word, like regulations or standards. There it is, for what they want everything to be. And so when they started to do all the dot buffing with Scalebreaker, it was like, okay, so they want dots to be more powerful. Maybe they overshot it by like a lot, but they want dots to be more powerful. Okay, this is the way the game is trending. And then we're going to start to see changes, that kind of support this. And then the next patch, like I said, they nerfed them further than they were in elsewhere. So it's like, what purpose did the Scalebreaker patch serve if you, instead of being like, okay, so we made dots way too strong, so let's try now making them weaker than they were before. Like, I still to this day don't understand what the purpose of it was. And it's kind of confusing to me what the thought process is and where things are headed into the future,
Do you think that would be as simple as them putting a poll together before they actually do any? Don't let them do any of the math. They just put a poll together and send it to the major content creators. You, Deltia, is there no one else? Send it to the major content creators that are in the PvP realm. Dan from Unified Gaming, like people that understand what's going on, and just say, hey, which would you rather see? And
well, I know they do get a lot of that type of feedback from their class reps, and I know that feedback is given, and ultimately as content creators, as people in the class rep program, like all we can provide is the feedback, and ultimately it's up to ZeniMax and whoever is in charge of the those decisions about where combat's going in any given patch. It's kind of up to them to curate that feedback and decide what they want to do with it. All we can do is give it to them, and ultimately they got to make the decision with what they want to do and what they want their game to be.
Why class reps?
I feel like the class reps, I mean, the whole point of that system, kind of, at least my understanding of that system, was to take people that have a really deep understanding of the game and have a really deep understanding of how the specific classes work and how the game works from a PvP and PvE perspective, and curate high level feedback from those individuals, And so I know that similar types of feedback like that is being given. It's just kind of, because I know that at least that I assume that's what the program is for. And so I think they just need to take a lot of that feedback into account, and feedback from the content creators too, and what they think as well, and kind of try to find a middle ground for everything. It's just sometimes the directions and the decisions they make, I'm like I said, they kind of stump me sometimes about what the thought process is. And I agree with what you said, though. Sometimes it would be nice to be like, hear from them, be like, okay, so, because I know they do sometimes do the combat preview posts like before a patch comes out, but I'd like to know sometimes too, like, what's the thought behind, like, okay, so we're gonna buff or nerf dots by a ginormous %, and this is our thought process behind it, and it would be interesting to like get a look into that, to be like, well, why is this massive change happening,
So, I guess regarding the class rep thing, do you know how long it's been known, or how long that program has been active? Because I know, like, even with my own personal job and stuff, whenever like the managers or directors, they want to start up a new type of department or team or something like that, within, say, like 6 months or the following year, we all expect some sort of report that says, hey, we started this program a year ago, this is what we were able to accomplish, here's what our KPIs look like, that type of thing. I would love to see some sort of data, or like a results, or a summary on, hey, we started a class rep program, and we'll just say January 20. I'm just making stuff up right now. But we'll say that we started at January 20. It's been a full year, and thanks to the class rep program, we got a lot of feedback with wardens, and now wardens are stronger than ever, or something ridiculous like that. What were the benefits of this class rep pro, or like, what were the intention of the class rep program, and then what were the benefits that we saw based on all the feedback that we got, everybody, and where we're looking to take the game. I would love to see something like that. But
absolutely, I know the rep program's been around for quite some time. It's been at least a couple of years now. I remember when it came out. I don't remember specifically what patch, but I do remember the beginning of the program and it starting. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, yo, this is an awesome idea. Like, this is fantastic. I wish more games did this. And I feel like this awesome program was created. And I mean, I don't know how much it's being utilized, but there's a part of me that doesn't think it is being utilized as much as it could be. I mean, granted, I am just taking a guess, and maybe it is, but I don't know. I think they could probably utilize it a little bit more than they are.
So without that summary, why do you think it's not being utilized? What gives you that impression?
So just with some of the changes that have been made to the game and the players that I know in the program and their opinions on the game, it seems like I'm trying to think of a specific instance. It's just kind of been like, oh, so much has changed in ESO over the last couple of years. I just know that a lot of the people that I know and the opinions that they have seems, very, very different than what ends up getting implemented into the game. So, granted, I mean, I'm just taking guesses. I could obviously be wrong, and they could be utilizing it more than I think they are. But at least on the surface, just like I said, from the couple of players that I know in the program that I do talk to on a regular basis, it doesn't. Like I said, their opinions seem different than what ends up getting implemented, if that makes sense. So I'm just assuming, and granted, I could be obviously very wrong, but it seems like from the outside looking in, you know what I'm saying? Like looking into the fish tank, it seems like it's not being utilized as much as it could be.
Yeah. I think that you hit the nail on the head there. I'm going to use an analogy here because it's, outside of this gym industry, it makes sense to me, but I have my elite level wrestling coach. I have my elite level jiu-jitsu coach. I have my elite level Thai coach. I have my elite level boxing coach. These are all our class reps per se in the ESO community. It's still on the head coach to
exactly. Yes.
It's still on the head coach to take the information from each one of these people and then make sure that the the final product is a very well balanced thing.
Absolutely.
And I think you had talked about it. You said they need to find the middle ground. I think there's a flaw in this whole program if they have to find the middle ground. Instead, I think they should be looking to the class reps or be looking to other content creators that know and understand every class. They know and understand every play style and where the balance or lack of balance is at. Because here's an example. What's your favorite, most dominant class? DK, Mag DK, Sam DK? What is it?
My personal best class is definitely my Mag DK. Yeah.
Mag DK.
Yeah.
So you could tell us the ins and outs of the Mag DK to a T. And when they send you inquire with you about the Mag DK, you'll give them the full whatever, here's how you can make Mag DK operate optimal. Here's all the changes that it takes. And you give them that information. They're getting the same thing from a sorcerer rep, and it still requires them to figure out what the middle ground is so that both those classes are balanced.
Absolutely.
But if they went to somebody that understood the Mag DK super well, the Mag Sork super well, understands all the different classes and what's overperforming and underperforming and what do we need to do, and you look at it from a whole, what do we need to do because this class is lacking right now? Like if you just threw out off tip of your tongue, what's the weakest play style or class right now?
For what? For PvP?
Yeah, for PvP.
I would say probably the one that feels the weakest at the moment would probably be Magicka Nightblade. If I was to just throw out my first one, I'd say Magicka Nightblade.
It's very gear dependent, right?
Yeah.
And it's
because 100%.
It's because the class itself is lacking in tools, especially when you compare it to the other Magicka.
Magblade always feels like it needs one more skill slot. Always feels like it needs one more.
Yeah, totally agree. Now if you went to the class rep for a blade, a Nightblade, Mag Nightblade, and you said, hey, tell me for your Magblade what it needs, what it could do or whatever, their wish list might not even get you to, if they're not thinking about the other classes and the potential of the other classes, and they're only thinking about their class and what they'd like to see on their class to make it better, it still might be underperforming what other classes are able to do. But if you were to ask them, okay, I want you to take a Magicka class from all the other classes and compare them, and then look at your class and because that's ultimately what we should be doing. Like everybody will say that the burst on a Magsorks need, they'll say Magsorks need nerfed. They're overpowered. Well, I think that they're perfectly powered. Their burst, their kit, just the way everything lines up on a Magsork is dangerous. And
Right.
if they're the alpha predator as far as mag classes go, then how do we get the other classes up to them?
Yeah, it's better to have every class feel good than have every class feel bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
you don't want balance to be okay, every class feels terrible to play. You want balance to be every class feels powerful in its own right, and you feel good playing it. It feels like it flows. Obviously certain classes are going to have certain strengths and weaknesses, but at the same time, you could just obviously look at the class balance and the way it is now, that some things are obviously just way overperforming compared to others.
Yeah. We've been joking, Icy and I, on our previous episodes about, man, we really wish that we had a direct line to the president or a difference maker in ESO, and maybe we only use that phone call once a year.
Yeah.
And we pick it up and we say, Mr. President and Mrs. President, we have a problem. And it be a legitimate problem, and they know that when that phone rings, it is a legitimate problem in the PvP realm. And then, but you never make that call without actually having an idea, a fix for it. Here's what I would do to address it, to make it easy for them. Don't just throw the problem at them, so that way they're just constantly on the receiving end.
Yeah, it's really easy to say this is a problem, do something about it, but it's a lot harder to say this is a problem and here's how I would fix it. I mean, typically even on my stream, if I try to, if there's a problem I see in the game, I always say, I always try to look at other people's perspectives too. I've seen so many different answers to so many different problems, and I see merit in all of them. I mean, obviously not all of them, but most of them, many of them. But it's ultimately with the solutions that ZeniMax or any gaming company could use to fix any problem. It's up to them to make the changes to fix that problem. But, when you see an obvious issue in the game, I'm just going to use proc sets as an example because it just seems like the most obvious one for this type of conversation. When you see the issue of proc sets feel too strong, and then you put this math into the PTS, and then people make stronger proc sets than already exist, it's like it's like what's going on here? What are we doing? I thought we were good. The whole intent was to try to make them a little bit weaker, or make them, people have to allocate more towards stats to then get these proc sets to be stronger, and it doesn't feel like the intent is what happened.
Yeah, just scale them through Battle Spirit passive. Control them through Battle Spirit passive with a 20% throttle on them or whatever, and it just requires you to spend an afternoon, go through and separate the proc sets, to separate all the armor sets that do free damage and free healing, and put a stamp on it and call it a day.
Yeah, especially because they already went through, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think in one of the previous patches they did an audit of all the proc sets and tried to because I know they had all these I don't remember the specific name. They had these damage coefficient things, or some sort of power number, because they have some sort of internal math thing that they do. Because I remember it being talked about on the forums where they have some sort of internal power number thing, and they try to have their sets are to meet that number. And I know that's I think I believe is what they use to balance the proc sets. And so they kind of did a huge balance pass on that already. So theoretically, yeah, you should be able to kind of go through Battle Spirit and be like, all right, proc sets feel a little bit too strong this patch, so we're gonna, chop 15% off of them, and see how it feels. And then kind of like we said, if not enough, all right, 20%, or too much, all right, 10%, and just kind of tune the knobs from there.
Yeah, and those incremental changes are taking place in the PvP realm and not affecting PvEers whatsoever. And so now they'll only complain about not being able to access their crafting bag, and
I do feel that Battle Spirit is definitely not as utilized as it could be. Definitely think they could do more with it to help separate some of the PvP and PvE stuff where we could address certain PvP concerns without necessarily affecting PvE.
Yeah. I was tuning into one of your streams, and somebody had asked you about this, and it was really, really intriguing. And I love the just the whole conversation. But I wanted to know, could you explain your thoughts on competitive arenas in ESO versus like
Yes.
what's going on in World of Warcraft? Because
Yes.
I played World of Warcraft for 8 years, so and
Mhm.
I did arenas a lot. So
Yep.
yeah.
So competitive arenas is actually something I remember thinking at one point that would be something that would be great for ESO. And I remember being like, yo, it would be so awesome if ESO had this because it was one of my favorite aspects of WoW. And so it was something that I wanted ESO to have too. But as I've become more experienced in ESO and as I've played the game more, I actually think competitive arenas in ESO would be a terrible thing. And I don't think it would be good for the game for a multitude of reasons. Number one, if you just look at any competitive tournament that happens in game, whether it be a small group v small group or even duel v, it's just like a dueling tournament, there's always certain things that are banned. There's always certain sets, certain things that are banned because it's like, okay, this is not going to be a healthy thing for a competitive environment. And
Oh,
so,
Dottz, could
yeah.
you explain competitive arenas, like what you mean by that?
So what I mean by competitive arenas, for those of you who don't play World of Warcraft, is basically the way that WoW Arena works is it's either 2v2 or 3v3. And it's basically a one life team deathmatch. So the second somebody on the enemy team dies, generally the game is over because at that point it's a 2v3 and more often than not the two are not going to kill the three. You know, occasionally if two people are getting really low at the same time, you'll get a cross kill and then it becomes a 2v2. But in general, when I say arena, I mean one life team deathmatch where it's like either 2v2 or 3v3. At least that's the size in WoW. ESO could, if they were ever to try it, could probably do different numbers, but I do not think it would be a good idea. But that's what I mean when I say arena. But yeah, I mean, you already look at the number of sets and things that have to be banned in a competitive duel tournament whenever those are held in ESO. All of those things would then, I assume, be present inside a quote unquote competitive arena in ESO, and it would just be a disaster. You also have the issue of builds in ESO not necessarily adhering to the Trinity, the same that they do in a game like WoW, where each spec in WoW is a lot more predefined than in ESO. And that's one of the good things about ESO is the fact that you can build your character to be whatever you want. It could be really tanky or it can deal a lot of damage or somewhere in between. And the what your builds can be is not nearly as clear cut as okay, a Frost Death Knight in World of Warcraft does this. Like there's no sets really in WoW, there's just stats. And it's very easy from a competitive balancing standpoint to just be like, okay, we're going to tune this talent, we're going to tune that talent, we're going to do this. But with ESO, because you have all these different skill lines and all these different sets and all these different foods and all these different things you could do, its strength from a building standpoint then becomes, in my opinion, a weakness from a competitive arena standpoint because it would just become a balancing disaster for you to try to, you know, because what happens if you walk into an arena and there's 3 Magcro tanks? How is that game ever going to end? You know, it's not. And yeah, you could say, oh, they could put some sort of dampening in that, but even then, there's still it won't be enjoyable. You know, just with the way that you can build in the game, I don't think it would necessarily facilitate a good competitive environment. And then the final thing I have for why I don't think it would be good is just simply the performance. I mean, you kind of think about, you know, anybody who's listening, I'm sure you've all had a moment where if you're PvPing, you know, maybe you clearly hit somebody with your Dawnbreaker, but it just whiffs right by them. And, you know, it kind of annoys you in the moment because it's like, oh man, I could have killed this guy, but my Dawnbreaker whiffed right through. I had to press Engulfing Flames about 87 times for it to finally go on my opponent, you know? And when you're casually PvPing, like those things could become a little annoying. Now, what happens if you're, however they would do their ranking systems. Let's say you're in your placements to rank up to your next tier, you know, and you would win, you know, if you land this Dawnbreaker, game's over. I win. Dawnbreaker whiffs, opponent turns on you, you get killed. How happy are you going to be after that moment? You know what I'm saying? So I would just think that the development time would be better spent on improving the PvP and the systems inside of ESO that are its strong points than trying to add in some sort of competitive arena that I don't even think belongs in the game personally. I think it would just be better if they worked on and capitalized on what they already do well, as opposed to trying to add something like this in.
Yeah. You know, I'm in 100% agreement because I like competitive PvP too. As performance started to lack in the game, not being able to bar swap, use abilities and stuff like that, and just
Yeah,
abilities
the
missing.
ability lag. Oh yeah.
As soon as things started like that started happening, I started moving away from that opinion. Like, I don't want to see an arena, a 2v2 or a
Yeah.
3v3 or 5v5 or whatever until performance is addressed. And the reality of it is I'm not very confident that that's going to happen. This is not me being a negative Nancy or whatever. This is me I've been here since beta, and this is me going off of previous patches and releases and promises made and promises broken.
Yeah, I understand. That's even like my opinion on the whole lag thing has definitely changed over time too, because I've been very guilty of having my moments on stream where I've gotten annoyed with performance and I've gotten mad, but I've kind of changed my opinion a lot since coming back with Flames of Ambition, and I just kind of understand that performance issues are just kind of part of the game. And I can enjoy ESO for when it works really well. And if it's not working as well, I just take a step back and go play something different, but there's no, I don't really complain about it anymore because it's here. It's part of the game. And I could either choose to understand that it's part of the game, or I'm just going to be the type of person that's just angry all the time. But because the performance issues are part of the game and they're just kind of part of the environment of playing ESO in a PvP standpoint, that's why I don't think competitive arena would be good.
Yeah. If they were going to implement a competitive arena, they would probably need to do a base arena gear set and some type
Yeah.
of initial quest line that kind of breadcrumbs you into understanding light weaving and light attack weaving, heavy attacks, the importance and all these different things, and bring people along, right? Educate them and bring them along through some training. I think that would be important, but
Absolutely.
I just thought that was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Stability. So what needs to change in ESO PvP for PvP to stabilize?
So I think the biggest thing that needs to happen for like the kind of PvP and PvP balance to stabilize is the numbers that they use to balance and tune the game need to be smaller. I feel like every patch that we get is just this cataclysmic hit to the game in some way or form. It's like, so I feel like something huge is changed every patch, and we get these huge numbers. This buffed by 50%, this nerfed by 67%, overhauling this system, buffing this, adding it's I feel like every patch it's kind of exhausting with how much things change every patch. There's a lot of, I think, change whiplash in a lot of the community. Because I mean, I could even speak from just, I can speak from my own perspective on my own viewers that have come into stream, where I know a ton of people who have told me that they've taken a break from the game because it's just exhausting to kind of go through the changes. Because if you think about it, you get a patch that brings a lot of change to the game. Let's say you spend a couple of weeks trying to shore up your build and redo your character and get something set up. You enjoy that build for, let's say, a month and a half. They announce the new patch where maybe your build is going to be destroyed again. And at least for me, I mean, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, like my Mag DK build is the perfect example of this. My Mag DK build uses health recovery as a primary means of defense on its back bar, and health recovery is obviously going to be a part of Battle Spirit next patch, so it's being nerfed by 50%. So it's very hard for me to want to log in and play my build where I'm like, in a month, I'm not going to be able to play this anyway. So I really don't want to play it right now. And then, I also get a thought of, okay, well, let me put something different together right now. But it's like, well, why am I going to waste the gold to put it together right now? Where in a month, I'm going to have to redo it anyway. And so it just puts players in this constant flux of like, okay, I made a build. Okay, now it's bad. Okay, I made a build. And all right, now it's bad. I made a build and now it's bad. And this is me with tons of resources. I have a stream behind me. I have years in the game of stuff built up. Like, you got to think of somebody who's like CP 175 who doesn't have as much resources at their disposal, where, you know, maybe they watch content creators videos, they find a build that they like, they finally scrounge up all the pieces, and then that content creator's like, yeah, this build's gonna suck next patch. It's just like, but I just got all the pieces. And you know, it's I think that, and I know they're doing this audit thing, and it feels like it's been going on forever. And so I just think that they need to either let us know like a timetable for when we could expect things to kind of chill out, or they need to just kind of calm down with the numbers and the balancing. Because like I said, it just seeing constant like 50-60% or systems overhauled left and right, it feels like a lot of change whiplash every single patch.
Yeah. So
I
there's
I was just gonna say, I feel like for the health recovery thing, you know, in terms of increments, just do 10%, and then, you know, let it sit for a month, and then maybe do some sort of like random poll across the whole ESO community, or however they get the data, or decide to make these changes, and just say, hey, based on, you know, how do you think health recovery is doing in PvP? You know,
Mhm.
over the last month since we've nerfed it 10%. Yeah, it feels good. It still feels a bit overpowered. Still can't kill people. Okay, we'll knock it down another 10%, and then
Yeah,
the following month,
I've always wondered why they don't use their incremental patches more for small balancing tuning. You know, I've always wondered why they don't, because it's like, again, I play it's because it's funny to see, right, the difference between the player bases too. Because I play WoW as well, as you know, we've alluded to earlier, and there was a class that got a 10% buff on a skill, and people were losing their minds because they were like, this class is going to be broken because it got buffed by 10%. That's so much. And then I'm sitting here like looking at patch notes like, this skill got buffed by 167%. And I'm just like, oh God. You know, it's like it's funny, the like the difference in the way certain things are balanced. And like I said, for me, I feel like for ESO to stabilize, and it goes back to what I alluded with earlier when we were talking about Scale Breaker and Dragonhold, I feel like they need to just pick a direction for the car of the game to drive, and just drive that way. You know, I feel like it's like we're going forward, then we're going backward, then we're turning left, and then we're turning right, and then we're going this way and going that way. And I feel like it's hard to track where the game is headed balance wise, because it sometimes feels like it can be hard to find the common thread that's going between all of these changes, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
Growing
I forget. Oh, real quick. I think I mentioned it in the last couple episodes or not, but since Dottz just mentioned it, the incremental patches, I think I said that they don't have to go through with all of the set changes and what they're planning with the Blackwood drop. They can just do that separately, since it's not part of, you know, the actual DLC. Those are just like balance changes and things like that. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
It could be,
So
well, is it though, or is it a major component of their math, you know, in the Blackwood DLC? So,
That new Sithis helmet, though.
oh my,
yeah, yeah.
I had to bring it up.
hey, we're gonna fix werewolves for you. We're going
Uh.
to, you know, we're gonna make it their armor buff is now officially named, you know, Major Resolve. And by the way, we're releasing a helmet, you know, that has 10k armor on it. Just so you know.
16.8% mitigation off of one piece of gear.
Yeah, and 500 health recovery,
Yeah.
5,000 health.
Yeah.
Yeah, like come on. And but 0 block mitigation. Well, guess what? Werewolves don't block. You know,
Werewolves don't block. Mag Sorks
Werewolves-
don't block. Stam Blades don't block.
Yep.
Any vampire build, for the most part, you know, you can make the vampire build that blocks, but you don't have to. They don't need to block, because that's like already, if that goes through the way it is, like my Mag DK build will be a Destro Resto vampire build that uses Mist form for mitigation, and I just wear that helmet and don't block ever because I don't need to, because I have Mist form. So
you know, you don't need to. So you know, and I'm testing that Gaze of Sithis right now on the PTS, but I see things like that and I'm like, somebody had brought this up and they're like, do you guys not see the trend that's going on? Like at this point, it's pretty obvious. The game's been around for 7 years and they've been releasing the new patch or the new whatever, and they try and steer buyers to it. And so
yeah, you had Malakath last year, and now this year we have the Sithis helm.
and what happened to Malakath? You know,
yeah, right.
So what they're doing is they have these problematic mythic items or problematic armor sets or problematic whatever it is. It's super powerful, defines the meta, and as soon as they have that next new thing that they're trying to sell, they're like, oh, you know what? Time to address these things over here that you guys have been talking about. We're on it. And they go through and they adjust those, which in turn steers more pre-sales towards, because I got to get that gaze of Sithis, and I mean, it's a business and I get it, but it's not a very healthy playing environment.
Yeah, it's I think like I said, the word is it's tiring, because I know that's how I feel every patch. I mean, just even as a creator, and I'm not saying that the builds can't ever change and builds can just have to stay the same all the time, but it just whenever I know that a new patch is going to be announced, I'm usually excited for maybe the features or the new area that's coming, to see what it's going to look like, but there's always that thought in the back of my mind of just like, oh God, am I gonna have to overhaul all 70 plus builds on my website because of just massive sweeping change? It's like I literally just finished like a month ago, and it's like, am I gonna have to start this again? And it's I really hope that they just slow down on the balance, like the huge balance swings, because I feel like there have been points over the last couple of years where the game has been so insanely fun, and then it just is like, all right, well, we're taking a left down this road, and it's just like, oh, but
Yeah.
like,
no proc set. Everybody's like, yeah, no proc set. This is going to be fun. Some of the most riveting gameplay and counterplay. And, I'm not getting proc down. This is great. And then it went from 6 months to 3 months, and now all of a sudden, well, we're reintroducing proc sets. But don't worry, they scale off of specific things,
but they're going to be stronger.
Stronger. Yeah. And so it's like, come on. Every content creator right now is saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. Stop. Go live with it, and I'll be surprised if it doesn't go live. So
honestly, I'm kind of the same opinion. I'll be shocked if they make an adjustment beforehand. I mean, we're almost in week 3 here though, because we're obviously recording this on a Saturday. So I think on Monday we should have the week 3 notes. So at least what I've been saying is I think Monday's notes are going to be very, very telling of what Blackwood's really gonna look like from a combat perspective.
Yeah. I did have somebody that commented, they're like, you guys just sound disenchanted with the game or disenchanted with and it's like, actually, we're just speaking from track record, from our experience. So now I tell you what, those patch notes show up on Monday, and if they say, hey, we've decided not to scale procs, I will let out a huge sigh of relief, and I will high five in their general direction. I don't even know what direction that is, but I'll high five in that direction and say thank you.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I'm going to move forward just for a second, and then we'll come back to one. Current balancing concerns, things you would address. You just got done saying that you feel like I was going to say I feel like they're throwing darts at a dartboard. Like you're saying, left turn here, right turn here. Let's not move in a general direction. It feels like darts at a dartboard, and let's try and hopefully hit the sweet spot. But we feel like all these changes are happening in that moment, but then in the same moment, people are saying the right changes aren't happening.
The thing with balance, I feel like, is that balance, you're always going to have people with differing opinions. Like, I've literally seen comments on people's videos of, like, I don't remember whose video it was. I was watching someone's videos on their opinion of proc sets, and I literally saw a comment where I think it was on Christopher's video of the guy getting one shot by poison injection because like all 3 proc sets hit at the same time, and the guy had like 45k health and he got globaled. And there was some guy that was literally in the comments like, good, this should go through. Things should be this way. People that try to 1vx, like, screw you. Like, I should be able to kill you this quickly because you're annoying and I don't like you. And you have people with varying experience and varying opinions, and I think a lot of that comes from there's such a huge skill difference in players that have been playing for a while and are good at solo or small scale gameplay versus your average Joe. And so when they have these proc sets in their hands and they can finally kill that guy that's been kiting 4 people around a tower for 10 minutes and, trying to rotate his ult on everybody and get kills because they're not properly using their skills, you give him the tools to be like, hey, you can kill that guy, no problem. They're like, oh yeah, give me the tools, And so that's when you run into the issue of you have the people that are skilled who are trying to, you know, try to make they want to make gameplay as skillful as possible. They see these things and like, oh man, this is problematic. But then you have other people who, I'm not necessarily saying that they're bad, but just maybe people that are more casual, they don't have the time to put into the game to maybe be as proficient as someone who can play for 8 hours a day. Sometimes they get that tool and they're just like, all right, I'm ready to just nuke someone. But then you have other people who are on the flip side where I have a viewer of mine who's been telling me that he's really been trying to improve and he's really been trying to get better. And it's just so hard when he feels like he just gets nuked down so quickly and he's like, I don't know what to do. It's so difficult. But I'd say that the biggest balancing concerns that I have right now personally is, I mean, obviously proc sets. It's something that is very worrisome for the next patch. But I'd say besides that, the biggest thing that I would like to see is I'd like to see the base game classes kind of be more caught up to the DLC classes like the Necromancer and the Warden. Would really like to see them kind of be brought up, but ultimately, I just want to see the balance of things slow down. I want to see smaller numbers used because I feel like if you look at the game as a system, they're constantly making these giant inputs into the system, trying to find a state of homeostasis. But when you keep putting in giant inputs or pulling out giant amounts of things, it's going to be a lot harder for you to find that happy medium point where it's like maybe start chipping away at it with smaller increments,
Yeah. And when you make the huge swings to the left or to the right or subtraction or addition, you have a higher chance of breaking things or causing problematic combinations and sets. And so they're adding to their workload, I think, in that moment. So yeah, small incremental changes and hone in on it. And while you're making those small incremental changes, like you were saying, drive in a specific direction.
Yeah.
And just minute changes to the left or right, no oversteering, like, oh, too far to the left, got to go way to the right now. And along the way, as things come up on your radar that are problematic, address them on an individual basis, figure out the best way to address them. If it just so happens they're all proc sets, there's a way to address all the proc sets, that are problematic, bundle them together and then put a throttle on them. So
absolutely.
I guess real quick. So to your comment about the, that player that wants to just push a button to kill that really awesome player that seems unkillable.
Yeah.
I remember, what was it? It was Sinful and Zeros. Two of our buddies that we hang out with. They're hanging out in front of the EP base on their Necro and Warden, and I was waiting for Grim and everybody else to show up. So I went out with this, random group of like 10 players, right? You could tell they were just a bunch of PvEers. We bumped into Sinful and Zero, and these guys, they're high skill level type players, and I wasn't attacking them because I was just kind of watching and standing in the middle and stuff. And I could quickly tell that they were about to wipe this group of 10 players. Okay. And so I was like, you know what? Let me try something here. So because I was on my melee support, Stam DK, all she does is stun and immobilize and put snares on people. So
Right.
I was stunning them, immobilize them.
You're a 1v nightmare.
Yeah. So I quickly changed the outcome of that fight, and they died within like the next 15 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, after like 10 minutes later, we grouped up and then we went past them, whatever. They Zero and Sinful, they ran into the same group again. Okay, they wiped them, no problem. And the difference was that me, because I know that I need to stun and CC on when their immunity is up, because I have that knowledge. I don't need a bunch of proc sets to help kill good players. You just gotta understand how the game works, and then you'll be able to get the answer that you want. You don't need to push a button and have procs do it. Just have that knowledge of how the game works, which comes with time, I guess. But as you were talking, I was thinking like, should Zos be responsible in educating people on CC immunity or how to, some sort of tutorial on how to do a BG, or is that kind of up to us as content creators teaching players how to do a battleground or just how to fight in general?
I think it's kind of a multifaceted thing. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want to be better at something, I do think you need to go out and put the effort to be better in something. Like I
Mhm.
am, I definitely am. I'm the wrong person to ask for sympathy for, like, I'm bad at something and I just want to be better at it and I'm going to complain until someone gives me what I want, because like the way that I am, if I ever want to be good at something, I will put in like unreasonable amounts of work to try to be good at it. And if I fail, I fail, but if I try, and so at the end of the day, if you do want to be better at PvP, you need to put in the work and the time to be better at PvP, whether or not it is just going out there and trying to learn, or the base basically like, so to answer the first part of the question, I think some could fall on ZeniMax, where I know I've suggested this before, where I would love for them to have, you could bake it into the base game Molag Ball quest, where you have some sort of like base game area where it's like, hey, you adventurer, you're going to be fighting Molag Ball, but you're level 5. So we need you to learn how to fight. And you send them to like a sort of combat tutorial area where they learn certain basic things about weaving, heavy attacking, how to use your ability, CC immunity. And you basically can give them a breadcrumb quest off of the main quest to send them there and be like, hey, if you go do this, we'll give you a starting set of, let's say, blue quality gear on whatever you want. If you tell a new player, hey, I'm going to give you blue quality gear for just like learning this thing, I mean, I feel like most new players are going to go,
Mhm.
especially when you're new, right? You see blue quality gear, like, oh man, that's pretty good. And so you're going to go and you're going to get it. So I think that ZOS can do certain things outside of what they already have in the game to help just improve players in general. Like you could have them explain buff food and potions and passives and actives and things like that. Like you could have a solid like combat tutorial area with like target dummies and stuff that I think would be very beneficial. But when it comes to past that and learning all of the nuances and ins and outs of PvP, it's really about just kind of going out there and trying, because I know like, and that's what I always tell people on my stream when they ask me, how do I get better at PvP? And the answer on how to get better at PvP is it's not a pretty one. It's you need to play the game. Like you need to find a build that you think, let's say, you just for argument's sake, you take one of my builds, you put on one of my builds and you go, okay, I know Dott's played this, it tested it, it works for him. So I'm gonna put this build on and I'm just gonna go out and try to play. And you just have to go out there and try and fight people and die over and over and over again. I mean, I've streamed my entire ESO journey from when I was level 24 to who I am now. And there were so many streams when I first started of just me attempting to 1vx and miserably failing because I was so bad and so new. And people in my chat would make fun of me, telling me how bad I was and then look at me go and die and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't give up and I kept playing and I kept trying and I kept trying to learn. And eventually, I was taking more 1v1s. Then I took my first 1v2 and then I was 1v3, 1v4. And I think the biggest that I've had was with one of my friends. We did a 2v20, was like one of the biggest, small scale things that I had. And it's ironically enough, because it's funny, Icy, that you mentioned about seeing the 10 group of people chase around 2. I had a couple of the people from the group of 20 hate whisper me and my friend, telling us that we were being unfair to them. But it's like, you
Jesus.
have 10 times our people. Like just think, like just think. Look, the big thing that I always try to tell people, like I guess one little nugget of advice for PvP is, look at what your opponent is trying to do. That's like, if you can look at what they're attempting to do and what they're trying to do and look at your ability bars and be like, how can I stop them from doing what they're attempting to do? You will score a lot more kills that way, and you will prevent people from being able to kite you around like that, But it's really just, I am of the opinion that if you want to get better, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of just getting a free handout and being like, all right, here's an I win button. Go enjoy yourself. I'd rather, the type of person I am, I'd rather learn and try to get better and eventually be able to look back on the journey and be like, look how much I've improved versus where I was when I first started, you know?
Yeah, let's look at it from a business standpoint.
Yeah,
I can,
exactly. On a business standpoint, it's a little bit different though.
yeah, from a business standpoint, I don't know what their average lifetime value of a customer is, like what their
Yes.
average.
Mhm.
But if they want to stretch out the average lifetime value of a customer, then they should add these tutorials. They should take the time to educate their consumer, because the better ultimate, instead of giving them the free armor set, here's what's going to happen with the proc set. They're going to have a little bit more success than they were before by pressing one button and killing people, but ultimately it will never solve the problem of how do they survive, how do they get better at
Yeah,
PvP.
exactly, because they're at the mercy of those sets too. And what's ironic is that I've worked with a lot of people with helping them improve, whether it be at DPSing, tanking, healing, PvP, PvE, whatever. And ironically enough, most of the time it's like they're just missing some key things in their build. Like, hey, they don't have a gold quality weapon. They don't have buff food. They don't have a Mundus stone. Like, it's a lot of just, it's like, they're missing 3/4 of the puzzle and they don't even know they're missing the pieces of the puzzle. And so I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it could be a cool thing to have, like I said, like in each of the Davin's Watch, Daggerfall, and Volkel Guard, you have it there so that when you naturally go there through your questing experience, or you could even do this in the major starting zones for like the expansions, like Elsewhere, Greymore, Somerset, things like that, have it be a part of the questing experience where you get sent there before you're going on your adventures. Be like, yo, we need you to be stronger than you are now before you go out and fight the big bad monsters of the world, and have people go there. And you don't have to make like a full on, crazy thing where they're going to walk out to be a master. But I think even just addressing things like light attacking, heavy attacking, blocking, CC immunity, crowd control, buff food, Mundus, passives, and just be like a basic ability scaling, you could do that through some quest lines, and your player base as a whole would be so much better off for it. And again, I feel like you could RP the heck out of it through your quests and give people corresponding rewards. Like when they learn to block, give them a shield. When they learn how to dodge roll, give them a pair of boots. When they learn, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, give rewards that relate to the quest that they just completed. If they learn how buff food works, give them the 10 stack of tri-stat food, like some really basic things like that would educate the heck out of the player base, and I think could be very easily woven into the end game or into the game from a lore perspective.
Yeah.
I think the Fighters Guild would be an excellent.
Yes, that would be a great idea.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah.
Because like whenever you see, or whenever you go into the Fighters Guild buildings or whatever, you always see people doing what? Training, practicing, getting
That's
ready
a
for
really
something.
smart idea. I like that. Yeah,
that's why I'm the brains of the operation. But they're always training in there, right? What's a more perfect situation to like host a tutorial? And then when you're sent to these fighter guild halls, they'd be like, oh, hey, I see you got a Destro staff on there. Are you looking to be a mage? And then they can help guide you in that step or in that direction to like, hey, you're going to want this, this, and that. If you're planning on do a BG, make sure you got this, this, and that. Whatever tips, based on, I guess, they could consult, use that class rep thing, but like BG reps or something. I'm like, hey, what do you guys think would be appropriate steps to, get newcomers started when they first join a BG, that type of thing. Because I know a couple patches, I guess within the last like 6 months or so when they did the vamp changes, they did change the vampire tutorial where I think from before you just kind of gotta just kill a bunch of people in that crypt thing, and then that's about it. But now you're like, oh, hey, use your first ability and like do this to the target, and then use your second ability and do this.
Really good. I like
that. Yeah, I like that change a lot, and I would love to see more, detail for beginners, whenever they're, starting whatever new type of content.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, average lifetime value of a customer, if they want to increase it, they need to add things like this. And while it is all these things that we talked about, for the most part, are job security for content creators, the constant left turn, the right turn, and everything else, there is no shortage. there's no shortage of trying to find the meta.
Yeah.
They're trying to find the next build because they're constantly
Yep.
oversteering. But so that's a huge plus, and because there is a lack of tutorial or bringing people along with it built within the game, then it is on the content creators to be the ones that educate or inform.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why my complete beginner guide that I make every year is as insanely popular as it is, because it covers quite literally everything. And I actually, it's funny that that guide is actually what made me become an ESO creator, because when I was playing WoW, one of my friends from that I knew from high school was playing ESO at the time. He's like, "Yo, you should try this game." And I started playing it, and it was impossible to figure anything out. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I was like, because I was still making WoW content at the time, but I took the break from WoW. And so I was trying ESO. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, if I'm having this much trouble, I guarantee you there are other people that are having trouble too. And so at the time, I threw together what I knew, put it into like a 45-minute video and sent it on its way. And it eventually became the biggest video on my channel, and it was the only ESO video that I made. And so when I decided to quit WoW for good at one point, and I was like, I don't know what game I want to play now. That's what made me come back to ESO, because I had a small, tiny following on my channel of people that found me through that one guide that were like, "You explained everything so well. I'd love to see more beginner guide content from you." And that's what made me decide to start doing ESO. And I knew I wanted to do builds and PvP eventually, but I was like, I didn't know what to do on the way there. And so I said, you know what? I'll just make guides on things as I learn them, because there are literally no guides out there that teach you how to do anything. And so that's how I got my start. And eventually the complete beginner guide grew into this monstrosity of a 3 hour and 10-minute video every year. But they get a lot of views because it's like we were talking about, there's just not a lot in the game that kind of shows you what you're doing. So they're very, very popular video, and it's a popular topic because it's, people want to learn, but the tools aren't really in the game necessarily.
Yeah. How do you feel like, if we're talking about a healthy learning environment for upcoming PvPers and people or PvEers that want to dabble in PvP, and we're talking about these tutorials and things like that, some things I've run into in low BBGs. I do the teaser videos and low BBGs, and I do thematic builds, and we
Right.
have Captain America and Iron Man, all that. A thing that I'm running into is people are using the transmute system to transmute some of the problematic proc sets, and they're bringing them to low BBGs. And the major problem with that is, these sets have already been identified as problematic sets.
Yeah, they're just
And-
pub stomping. Yeah.
and so they've been identified as that, but through this transmute system, we're allowing them to bring them to low BBGs, where most of the time you don't even have the abilities or the skills unlocked yet, or the armor or anything to deal with these sets. And so I don't
Mhm.
think that that's a healthy environment. Would you change that? Like, if that were up to you, would you make it like, hey, you don't get to use a transmute system until you're over, or how would you address that?
I think honestly, a lot of that kind of goes back to the way that balance is at the moment. Because I mean, I'll be honest, there are certain BGs even now. Like I'm a very experienced PvPer, and there are certain battlegrounds, man, that no matter how hard I try, how well I think I play, like I can't live for more than 4 seconds. And I am somebody that has played this game for a long time, and I have a lot of experience. And I think about that. I think say the same thing too. I'm like, I cannot imagine, like, I'm stressed with all of this. I was like, I can't imagine someone who's like, yeah, I want to learn the PvP. They hop in and they just get one shot by like a Kalurian's proc or something. And they're just like, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. I think it's just the time to kill in the game is just in BGs, at least, it's so fast. And I feel like that's kind of, for me, I think that's the inherent problem right now, is that people can't even live long enough to think about what they should do. I mean, I even have times, like I've said, where I've been streaming and like all of a sudden you'll watch my health go from like 100% to 5%, then back up to 90 and then back down to 10. And even people in chat are like, what are you being hit by? And I'm just like, I'm taking damage from proc sets. It's just how the game is, man. Like, you know, you know, and it's just like, it's so stressful. And my build is
laughing
ahead.
about it, but we actually are
we're
crying
laughing because it's true, you know. And
Yeah.
I think it's for me, it just kind of boils down to that the way that balance is right now. Time to kill is so fast unless you specifically build yourself to be a tank necromancer who goes into Goliath form all the time, and you wear crimson and you never die, and you know. But if you're just your average Joe who's like, all right, I'm gonna slap on a couple sets with some impen and let me try to get some PvP action in today. You know, you don't know. Hey, you're not wearing 3 proc sets in Malekith. You don't have a place here, you know? Because I mean, even then, I've even tried to make a couple of builds this patch for other, because I don't like proc sets. Like I mean, in case that isn't incredibly obvious, you know, I use them on my Mag DK because it's what you need to use. But I have other characters like my Stamden doesn't use a single proc set. But even like when I play his build, if I don't play flawlessly, I just get obliterated. And I mean, granted, I can deal out a ton of punishment too, but it's amazing how much damage I feel like I take. And again, and I'm somebody who has a lot of experience, you know, and I just think that time to kill right now is just way too high. I feel like time to kill for the longest time was low, and people complained about the tank meta and nobody dying. And I feel like we've just swung in the opposite direction, where it's just everything and everyone dies so fast. And you know, well, like you said, for a new player trying to figure it all out, putting all the pieces together, they die before they can even figure out what went wrong. You know?
Yeah. So for the time to kill, what's the criteria for that exactly? And by that I mean, are we talking time to kill in like a 1-on-1, a 2-on-1, a 3-on-1, a 4-on-1? Because BGs, sometimes you get hit by all 8 players just on you.
Yeah.
So when you say time to kill is a little bit too quick, you know, what's your, you know, how many people are hitting you in this example?
I mean, this is just even speaking from somebody that comes out numbered. I feel like once it becomes like more than, I feel like for me with BGs feel very volatile because it's all about how many proc sets are on the enemy team versus how many proc sets are on my team. That's what it feels like. It doesn't necessarily. It's not necessarily how many players are attacking me, because I've had a couple of 1v4s in BGs where the players aren't wearing proc sets, but at the same time, I have fought against 2 Stamsorks who are all wearing massive proc sets, Vate Shrine, 2H, you know, all the different proc sets, Ashen Grip and all this stuff. And they streak me and I die in a streak stun, you know, and it's just 2 guys on me. You know, I feel like it's right now, it's a lot less dependent on the number of people. And it's just, I know I keep going back to the proc sets like a broken record, but that's kind of how it feels, at least to me in Battlegrounds. It feels like it's like who wins or not is predetermined based off of how many proc sets are on the team versus how many proc sets are on the enemy team, you know?
The majority of content creators are 100% with you on that. That's exactly how they feel. And that's the thing that bugs me the most, is when the content creators that really focus on PvP content are all saying that, and it's being ignored. That's a problem. That doesn't give you very good faith in the decision making of a company. That, you know, I'm not trying to sound jaded, or I'm not trying to sound disenchanted.
No, of course, I totally understand. Yeah,
but that is the problem. And if you want to increase, going back to the business side, if you want to increase the lifetime value of a customer, you need to give them more time on the mat, or more time in out there, you know, PvPing, mixing it up, trying to kill someone, them trying to get killed. And a lot of people will say, oh, the fights take too long, or the fights last too long. Well, guess what? You're in training right now. You're not your final form. And by the time you hit, you know, above 50, because low BBGs should be where you're learning all of these tools, how to implement the tools, line of sight and crowd control and fighting outnumbered, and how to maintain your buffs and maintain your heals. And, you know, do I even have a Mundus Stone on? And why is my health at 14k? I don't, not even taking food. And so low BBGs are perfect for all this, and then figuring out gear and stuff. And then above 50 CP, like the above CP BGs,
Right.
proc sets, that's exactly what it is. There's a meta. I have people that will message me and they'll say your builds don't work in high MMR. And then I'll say, well, that's why there's a meta. There's a meta for a reason. And if you picture a triangle, okay, and the bottom of the triangle is low BBGs and low MMR, and then the middle of the triangle is mid-level MMR, where people are starting to figure out how to crowd control and how to fight as a team and what gear set they should and shouldn't use and how to line up the burst and line up their damage. And and then there's the high MMR, and the high MMR comes to a very fine tip. And the reason it's high MMR is because almost everybody there is wearing the same things. They're wearing currently, they're wearing all proc sets. Yeah, that's a problem. If the meta is a proc set meta and you can only be competitive, there's very few people that step into the high MMR and can compete. They have to have an immense amount of experience, like yourself and other content creators, to step into high MMR and be able to hang. Because you're dealing with everyone's got nuclear capabilities.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that happens to me on my Stamden build. The reason I bring that one up is because that's the one where I noticed this the most. Where it's like you said. I feel like if I didn't play every encounter, if I didn't play it flawlessly, I died before I could even defend myself, because it's just like you said, everyone has a nuclear bomb in their hands and they can just chuck it at you and deal so much damage. But I don't know. I do have hope, and I hope things do get better, because I mean, if anybody follows me in any capacity, they know that I took a big step back from only doing ESO content last year, in about June, just because of a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. And now I did a little bit of only WoW for a while, but now I've changed to, I basically just do a variety of MMO specific content, and I play ESO if I'm in the mood, WoW if I'm in the mood, BDO if I'm in the mood. I have other MMOs that I plan to play on and do first impressions videos of. But I have to say, it was such a good feeling logging in to do my builds for Flames of Ambition and hopping into Cyrodiil and being like, I have not had this much fun PvPing in literal years. And it was such a good time. And I did nothing but play ESO for like 4 weeks straight because I was having so much fun. And it's just, then the Blackwood notes come out and I'm just like, oh no,
Oh, there's the left turn we were waiting for.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I was having so much fun, like, man, and it just, I'll always say that ESO has, and I've said this so many times, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have, I'm sure, said it too. ESO as a game just has so much potential, and it's such a fun game, and it's so enjoyable. And I really hope that the potential does get realized, and they can calm down on the balance swings and find a happy medium for things. But I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't nervous for Blackwood, because I'm definitely nervous, because I feel like we're starting to reach the end of this whole audit of what they want the game to be. And I feel like the way that the rest of 2021 goes is definitely going to be a huge indicator of what they want their game to be going forward. And it's kind of up to people to decide if they want to keep playing with that balance, or if they want to maybe try something new, And like I said, I know it's been very healthy for me to be even introducing different games into my rotation for those days where I'm like, ugh, I got killed by 87 proc sets. I want to go play something else, But hopefully things do kind of go back to more of like a balanced state, where ultimately the way I would like to see the whole proc set thing be is, like I said earlier, kind of like the way it used to be, where it's a cherry on top of your build. It's something that you can add into your build and your setup to give yourself some extra oomph, but it's not the entire sundae. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed in low BBGs was now they're occasionally mixing lobies in with above.
I noticed that too. When did that start? I feel like all of a sudden I remember distinctly I was doing a BJ and I attacked somebody. I was like, that guy died so fast. And I looked at him, he was level 25. And I was like, what? Like
Yeah, I was leveling up Steve Rogers, and I was leveling up Captain America. Or I was leveling up Steve Rogers. I was leveling up Iron Man, and I was leveling up Black Panther. And in all of those, I got placed in above CPBGs.
when
And
did
like,
that start?
I don't know, but that's not a healthy environment for your low
No, it's
your new
not.
players to figure things out. Like literally, one of the people we ran into was a harbinger. It was
Oh no.
a warden harbinger build. Yeah, and they were on the flag, and I was in a group with my buddy Nid from just one of the viewers from YouTube, and he jumped in the
Yeah.
group with me, and he's like, "Dude, that guy's 1700 CP," and I'm like, "What the heck? Like I'm level 22. I'm level 22. I don't even have my armor buff right now. Like, why are we,
I have
and
2 passives, man. Like, come on.
yeah, like,
That's
and
wild.
so I don't think now, why would that be? Is that because PvP queuing for Battlegrounds right now is so low? There's so few people queuing, or why would that happen? Why would that be a thing?
I don't know. The only thing I could possibly think of is actually what you just said, where I think if I remember the way, and I could be wrong, I thought ZOS made a change to the MMR system with BGs where it started off kind of tight, where we're looking for a specific MMR, and then it like widens over time. I might be thinking of something else, but I think they did that. Maybe I could be wrong. But maybe that's what's happening. Maybe as a low B player, you're queuing for a BG and it's looking, it can't find anything. It's looking, it can't find anything. And the amount of level difference gets wider and wider, and then it hits CP, and it's like, well, we couldn't find a game for you. So you want a BG? Here's a BG, and you're just like, wait a minute. Like, but yeah, no, I've noticed that. I've had that happen to me before. Well, I'll queue into a game, and literally every player on my team is below level 50. And it's just, I don't know when that started, because maybe that's, I don't know if that came with Flames of Ambition or a previous patch, but because I know, like, I played a little bit with Stonethorn and Markarth. Like, I know I played at least enough to update my site, and then I would, like, take a break again till the next patch to see how the game was. And I can't say I remember seeing that until, like, very recently. So I don't know when that changed. I don't know. But, yeah, it's definitely not a good thing.
No, yeah. And yeah, I could just picture you. You're in there and you're looking around. You're like level 20, level 12,
Yeah.
level 27. You're like, oh boy, I got to put on my try hard pants, for this BG. I'm gonna have to do some carrying. But I just saw that and I thought that was, and then you amplify the problematic issues with allowing to the crafting of items through transmute, a reconstruction of sets. And so now we're making it a hostile learning environment, and we're not giving them the tools necessary to succeed. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. I actually didn't think about that now, because I was wondering. I was like, at first when you said the transient says, I was like, oh yeah, I bet you. But you can like farm those things up in certain dungeons anyway. But then it made me think, oh yeah, like if you think about the certain dungeons that require you to be a certain level, and now you can, like you said, with the transient system, bring those stuff into lower levels. Like, oh man, yeah, that'd be super toxic.
yeah, and Icy figured it out. Like it only costs 25 transmute
Yeah, it's
crystals.
not that much. Yeah.
Yeah, you have all the items, and he can make all the stuff for level 10, and then as he gets to 20, at 20 he can decon just decon the stuff.
Yeah,
He gets all the crystals back, make a new armor set.
Oh my god.
So
Uh,
it's interesting.
yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. So what would you like to see? Let's assume that the game's perfectly balanced and perfectly stable from a performance standpoint.
Right.
Would you like to see a new class, weapons, different races? Would you like to see, what's on your Christmas wish list?
So I can't think of anything in terms of races. I've been asked that one before. There's nothing I can think of on that front. Weapons, or in terms of class, I think a monk class could be pretty cool, or like an unarmed fighter. That could be pretty neat. And then from like a weapon standpoint, I mean, I always thought a conjured weapon line would be cool. Granted, that was before they did the light attack scaling for every weapon to go off your max resource, so that's not as relevant anymore. I think like a spear skill line could be pretty cool. Those are the first two things that pop in my head. Some sort of spear skill line, and then like a monk for the class. I think some sort of unarmed, like highly mobile class would be so cool.
Oh yeah, like if they somewhat mimic it off of the monk from WoW. Ooh.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I think that could be really cool. And I mean, we've seen plenty of unarmed fighters, and there was unarmed skill lines in previous games, so it is lore friendly, you know. So I think it could be something cool to add to the game.
I'd like to see an unarmed like class that had like an ultimate that was similar to Lee Sin from League of Legends. That was like I think it was called like Dragon Kick or something like that. So it would function like a melee version of Magnum Shot, where you would just do like a spin kick and then knock the guy back like 20
That'd be
meters
so sick.
or something, and do a ton of damage. Or we'll say it does like max health damage or something like that. I think that'd be freaking badass.
Yeah, and then you could have a different skill in the kit. Like speaking of Lee Sin, that you could like gap close to them afterwards. That'd be so cool. Yeah.
Dude, it would be so awesome.
Yeah.
See, I want to see from Bloodsport, I want to see the dim mock or like the death touch. I just want to see like a Bruce Lee 1-inch punch, just a and just like stuns them, doubles them over, and they fall down. That's what I want to see. Just something like that. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Okay, well that's on our wish list. Monk. All right, Zoss, make that happen. That'd be great. Did you have any?
Well, actually, so in addition to the monk thing, what about like an unarmed weapon class? Would you rather prefer a monk or have all the classes have an unarmed weapon skill line?
I'm trying to think. I don't know if they'd be how they would incorporate that into certain classes if they did an unarmed line. I'm trying to think of an unarmed mag sork, how that would work. I'm not really sure. I do think if they wanted to go the route of like some sort of like quote like unarmed line, like maybe like a fist weapons skill line could potentially be cool.
Like brass knuckles or something like that?
Yeah. Or like I just think of like fist weapons from WoW, where you could have like weapons that you hold in your hands, whether they be like again, you could even do like conjured weapons too, where you could conjure like some sort of weapons that you hold in your hand or something that you can act like fist weapons in that sort of animation. Would be pretty neat.
Yeah, cesties or size or
Yeah. Yep.
Sapper gloves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be fun. Did you have any questions for us, or we're getting towards the end?
No, nothing I can think of.
Okay.
Oh, I had a final question for Dottz here. So, since you're talking about the MagDK and that's one of your mains, what do you think? Well, I guess let's pretend you're like a class rep, right? Okay. What do you think lacks in the MagDK kit, and like what would you buff or think that needs a nerf?
So I have a couple of things. It's funny because I talked to certain people and they're like, "Oh man, MagDK needs an entire overhaul," and I'm like, "No, I don't think so. I think DK needs like a couple of small things because again, I'm a huge fan of it. Isn't incredibly obvious from the last however long we've been talking. I'm a big fan of small change over time. Like little changes frequently. There's a couple of things that immediately come to my mind when it comes to the MagDK that I think would be really beneficial. The first thing is that protective plate unequivocally needs to be buffed. It is the only movement skill in the game that gives you 2 seconds of root immunity and 1 additional effect. Every other skill that gives you 2 seconds of snare and root immunity gives you at least 3 total effects off of the skill. Or if it only does give 2 effects off of the skill, the root immunity is set to 4 seconds. It is the only, and especially with the standardization, I don't kind of know why this slipped through the cracks. It's the only skill that is 2 seconds of root immunity with only 1 additional effect. So I would either like a 3rd effect added to it, or I would like that snare and root immunity increased to 4 seconds. The other thing that I can think of off of the top of my head is whenever people say that MagDK needs an active execute, I shudder because the class already has such crammed ability bars. There's no way I'm shoving another skill in my ability bars. So personally, I think something that would play into the class thematically and not affect like stam in a way, because that's always like kind of like the issue I feel like with certain classes is how do I buff the magic aversion without making the stamina version just oppressingly OP? And I think something that they could do for Mag DK would be like if your if your opponent is under X% HP, kind of like the Necromancer execute. While your opponent's under X% HP, you could either make it so that your flame damage dots deal X% more damage, or the burning status effect deals X% more damage. Some sort of passive dot-based execute would be really cool, I think, or if your opponent's below a certain percentage of health. It wouldn't crowd up the bars, wouldn't buff stam. I think it play into the class theme pretty well. Wouldn't be too broken, I don't think. And then the third thing I could think of is a very obvious one, and it's just to lower ability costs. By lowering ability costs, that means that the Dragon Knight has to invest into less sustain, which means that they'll be able to translate more into damage.
Love that.
So those are the three things I can think of immediately. I don't think the class necessarily needs this full, total, massive rework. Like I know some people think it does, but I just think it needs a couple small quality of life things because the class is so fun to play. Like I obviously love it. No matter how many times I try other classes, I always go back to it because it's just so enjoyable. But I think like a couple of small quality of life changes would make the class a lot more competitive with other classes out there. But if I had to choose of all of those three changes, if I had to only choose one, it would easily be the wings change, because wings is such an expensive skill, and only being able to move on a already slow class for a whopping 2 seconds is so terrible. And I know some people might be like, well, race against time, dude, just use that. But the problem with race against time is the current meta projectiles are so strong. Like mag sorks are strong. You have snipe is strong. And so if you're trying to kite while you're just getting bombarded by all this range damage, there's no way you're living through that. So wings actually has a lot of value because you are able to dampen so much of that incoming damage, or you use mist form to dampen it depending on which tool you prefer. But I don't think race against time is necessarily the answer. I think if you buffed wings in that way, and it wouldn't even be that, well, it's not like, oh man, wings is broken now. It just give it either. I think the ideas I've come up with are 2 more seconds of snare immunity, or like minor expedition, or you could do maybe evasion, or you could do some sort of other defensive buff, like damage on you is dampened for a small period of time. I don't know, like maybe minor resolve. I don't know. It's just something else on the skill, I think, besides what it has, would be a really welcome change, because I think the skill needs a little bit of love.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, those recommendations don't really seem like you're asking for much. So
Nope.
do you think with those 3 things, you think the DK or the Mag DK would be somewhat up to par with the other classes?
I'm not sure. I'd have to see once those things were implemented. I'd have to see, how that kind of felt out. But from my experience playing the class, that kind of sums up some of my biggest problems. I have to budget a bit for sustain off of things because, again, all of our skills cost an arm and a leg to use. A lot of times I struggle to close out a kill because my opponent is just barely alive and I can't finish him off. But maybe if my dots dealt a little bit more ticking damage, maybe I'd be able to finish off killing off the guy. And then the biggest struggle that I feel that I have on my build personally is if I'm facing some guy that just spams bombard or spams the warden slows. Like, I spend so much magicka trying to get away because I play my build in heavy armor, so I can't really dodge roll. So I am just pumping magicka into wings, and I'm watching my magicka pool just plummet because it's this expensive skill that only lets me move for 2 seconds. And it's not even like I'm moving fast. I just get to move freely, And 2 seconds is so painfully short. So
Yeah.
I think some little thing of that. I mean, at least for me, when I play my DK, that would kind of shore up the things that I feel that the class really struggles with, like comparatively to other classes. And I don't know. I'd have to see if those things were added, how it felt at that point. But I mean, for me, there's not really anything else that I can think of that I'm like, oh man, I feel like I need this, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing else I can really think of off the top of my head.
It'd be
What
so easy
about
for through combustion passive. Your
Yeah,
execute,
yeah,
just make it to where your dots start exploding for double the damage when they're under 30% health or something along those lines.
yeah.
I
Or
mean,
if you like reapplied it or something, it would be like like
Mhm.
you said, like an explosion of damage. So there's a couple of different things that they could add, but I feel like some sort of passive execute for flame dots specifically, so that it doesn't affect Stam, who already has access to an execute. I feel like would be super cool, and it would play into the class thematically, but it wouldn't be overpowered. I feel like it's a very reasonable change.
Yeah.
yeah? What about the idea of a stamina whip and doesn't make sense thematically?
I think I would have to say though, if they ever did incorporate a Stam Whip, I'd 100% want to see Molten Whip go, because I love Flame Lash with every fiber of my being. It's such a fun skill, even though I'm probably going to go back to a Molten Whip build next patch. Just because with the whole health recovery change, I'm going to be going for a more offensive Destro Resto build, and I want to use Molten Whip for that. But I could very easily see some sort of Stam Whip going. Like, man, I have been probably one of the biggest haters of Stone Fist. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the clip of me go around when Stone Fist first was like announced as a skill. When I did the animation, it was just me hysterically laughing at it. Like, and granted, the animation and stuff has improved over time, but it is still such a clunky skill to use. Like, it is not good. One thing that I thought of instead of the Stam Whip was, if they, instead of making Stone Fist this like really odd, like first I smash the ground and then I summon these orbs and then I throw the orbs at you. I thought it would be really sick if you like encased your weapon in stone
Yeah.
and did some sick animation where you just smash your opponent over the head with it. Like, you could have that skill, to me, would not only look amazing, but if you, with the right audio, because I'm a huge sucker for impactful audio. So you could have that make such an impactful hit noise when you hit your opponent. Like, that will feel good every time you click that. You're just rocking your opponent with your like stone weapon, just cracking it over them. And each time you deal damage to them, like, you could even keep some of the aspects that Stone Fist already has in the skill. Like, each time you hit them, they're taking more damage from it, and but just make the skill feel good to use, because it feels so weird, like throwing these rocks at my opponents when I'm supposed to be this big melee Stam DK, and I'm just like, throwing rocks at you.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of people like really want the like green whip, but I feel like they could, if they wanted to do the green whip, they could. But I feel like Stone Fist has so much potential to it that is just absolutely not being realized, because I hate the skill. I think it's so bad. I think they need to just make it like an instant use, make the animation really sick, and I feel like it's going to be a skill people actually want to use and put on their bars.
Yeah. I used Stone Fist on my Hulk smash because D-Swing at the time wasn't working, and it was kind of a boring play style. Everyone was so burnt out on D-Swing, and
Yeah, I
so
feel you.
Stone Fist kind of fit the Hulk smash. He stomps on the ground, does a bunch of AoE damage, and then he's throwing boulders at people. But
Yeah.
so I could pull that off. But at the end of the day, it's so clunky. It's hard to light attack weave to maintain stamina.
Oh, yeah, it's so bad.
And you find yourself just throwing when they're at ranged away from you, and just expending stamina. So it doesn't help with sustain at all.
Yep.
I had
Yeah.
mentioned taking both the whips and combining them together. Maybe not in their full power or full
Right.
form, but just combine the two of them together. Keep the function of Molten Whip building up the stacks for a heavier hit, and keep the function of, if you happen to whip someone when they're CC'd, you get a heal from it. Just
Right.
combine the two, and then there's your space for your stamina whip.
Yeah, you could even lower the heal on
Mhm.
Flame Lash, and then maybe lower the stacks on Molten Whip to maybe 2 instead of 3, and
Yeah.
so that you can't build it up as much.
Yeah.
That could
Why
be really.
are-
I actually didn't think about that. That's a really interesting idea. I'd like that a lot. Yeah, because I
Why
like
are-
both skills.
Yeah, why are we so that way neither side can say, "Oh, you ruined my class. You took my whip away." And it's like, actually it's there. We just adjusted it and gave you a heal or
They'd
and gave
have to
you
they'd have to keep the flame lash animation and sound though, because it is
Yeah.
infinitely better. Molten Whip has just the worst audio cue.
Yeah.
It's so terrible. But if they I think that'd be really cool and they could do some sort of green flame whip. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like that. And then, and I thought, well, instead of one whip, what if you did two whips, two green whips or whatever, you added some, I think of Iron Man, what was the actor's name that had the two electric whips and he whipped the cars and Rory,
Yeah, I know what you're talking. I can't think of
Yeah,
it
it was
off the top of my
Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2, Rory,
Something.
that actor,
Yeah.
but that actor.
head. That
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, but there's your opportunity to do that, I think. And the costs on MagDK when you try and go the spell damage route on a MagDK, you end up burning through half your magicka just to maintain your buffs.
Yup.
So
That's always why I've always tell people. It's funny you mentioned that because I always get asked all the time, why are you arcane and not infused? And I was like, because having a nice healthy magicka pool on a MagDK is so much more valuable, because for that exact reason, I have enough of my resource to actually use my skills. Because if you run such a low magicka pool, you will cruise through it just trying to maintain everything, especially if you're like fighting a Templar or a Necromancer. I spend 98% of the fight just rotating through my buffs,
mhm. Yeah. Why are we 7 years in and no stam whip?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Isn't that weird? A lot of people been asking for it. I know Is There No One Else? That's number one on his needs to happen and has been. And he's been a content creator for 5 years. And
Yeah.
he's like, why no stam whip? Your major content creators are all asking this. Why no stam whip? Is there somebody at ZOS, a gatekeeper or a protector, who's like, don't touch my MagDK? Nobody touches my whips. I got a Magicka whip that does this and a Magicka whip that does that.
I don't think there's anybody advocating for the DK, man. It sure doesn't feel like it. It sure doesn't feel like it. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's funny you mentioned that. I feel like sometimes with the newer classes, especially, stamina identity feels so much better than some of the base game classes, with the exception of maybe Nightblade. Where the stamina classes just feel so fleshed out. And I feel like, it's gotten slightly better over time, but I do think like the Sork, the DK, could definitely feel a little bit better in their role as a stamina character than they do, not have to rely so heavily on weapons.
Yeah. So, YouTube, obviously you have a channel on there, and Twitch. Where can everyone find you at?
So I have basically across everything. I am Dottz Gaming. I thankfully have that on all of the social media platforms that I am on. But you have me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I have Twitch. I have my own website, dottsgaming.com. I also have a Patreon as well, if you want to support through that. So I think that's everything. I have a lot of things.
Perfect. And so I can find those because we're going to link those in the descriptions of the video. I can find those on one of your videos and I can just copy and paste.
Oh, yeah, it's all in the description. Yeah.
Perfect. What about merchandise? What are different ways?
I do,
people
yeah.
can
I have my merch through Teespring. So if you go on my website, if you go on dottsgaming.com, you'll see at the top of the website there's a link that says, or there's a thing that says shop. If you click that, it'll take you straight to the Teespring website. And if there's anything you're interested in picking up, you could buy it through there.
Awesome. Okay. So I'll get all that information. It'll be in the descriptions below. And then if there's any particular video that you want to send traffic to also that that kind of sums up your content and what you're about, your favorite video or whatever.
So I would say of the videos that I've made recently, if there's one video I'd say go take a look at, my Is ESO Worth Playing in 2021 video. That's kind of an example of the way that I want my content to be moving forward. maybe for those of you who don't know me as well, I was exclusively doing ESO for a very long time, and I then decided that I kind of was tired of playing one game all the time, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, you know what, maybe I'll try going to WoW. And I was only playing WoW for about 8 months, but with Flames of Ambition coming out and me having fun with ESO, but still enjoying WoW at the time, I decided to go into more of a variety aspect, but I'm still focusing very heavily on MMOs. That's going to be like the genre that I primarily focus on. And what I kind of want to do is focus more on first impressions. Is it worth playing? Beginner guides and tips, character builds for the different games that I'm playing, and just really focus on informational content for people. So if you want an example of what I am looking for my content to be going into the rest of 2021 and beyond, my is ESO worth playing in 2021 and is WoW worth playing in 2021 are going to be perfect examples. And then this upcoming week, I have is BDO worth playing in 2021. So those types of videos, yeah, definitely recommend going and checking those ones out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. I know we've had it in the works for quite a while. Thanks for working with our schedules.
Yeah, no problem, man. My pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Had a good time.
What you got, Icy?
Well, I think that's pretty much it. Any final closing remarks, Dottz, if you want to say anything before I close it?
No, I think I'm all right.
Awesome. So with that said, we'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
You're going to say bye-bye, Argonians.
Bye bye, Rogonian.